Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, hot or not, we'll be taking a look at the special team kits that will be used at this year's Tours de France. I'll also be looking at the best bits from the National Championships weekend and which National Champions jerseys we'll be seeing at the Tour de France, which starts this Saturday. 5 days to go, people. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Tadej Pogačar is ready for the Tour de France. In his first competitive outing since that crash at Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he won the Slovenian Time Trial Championships by over 5 minutes and went on to win the road race ahead of Luka Mezgec 3 days later. They were his 13th and 14th victories of 2023 from just 21 days of racing. We also learned that the most successful Tour de France rider still racing, Chris Froome, will not be at the race this year. Israel Premier Tech announced their 8-man roster last week, and the 4-time winner was a surprise omission. Froome has vowed to return in 2024, and speaking to GCN, cited equipment problems for his lack of results so far this year. We also learnt that Sam Bennett also won't be at the Tour de France for the 3rd year in a row. The Irishman was left off Bora Hansgrohe's team, and it will instead be Jordi Meus, who is their designated sprinter. And he will be competing at the race with an altered Bora Hansgrohe jersey. Now, the German team is one of many to bring out a special design for the biggest race in the world. Some teams, such as Jumbo-Visma, are in fact forced to change their design so as not to confuse people looking out for the yellow jersey of the race leader, whilst others just want to celebrate the big occasion. Which makes it a little surprising that Bora's jersey is even more green than it was, albeit a different shade of green to that of the points jersey. They've gone for marine green, with some subtle details such as the names of all the riders who've ever competed at the race for that team over the last decade. What do you reckon? Hot or not? I am going to give that one 9 out of 10, I reckon, because it's subtle and classy, not too in your face. Although please bear in mind with my ratings that A, I'm not very fashionable, and B, I'm a middle-aged bloke. I will be asking you for your ratings in the comment section down below. Up next, Bahrain victorious. Probably the biggest departure of any team compared to the kit we're used to seeing them race in. It's predominantly white with some hints of light gold and blue, whilst the shorts are, thankfully, black. Now, I'm not sold on this one based on the pictures that I've seen so far. Maybe it will look a little bit better when they're racing with it, with the matching helmet and bike, etc. But for me, 6 out of 10. I was going to say 5 then, but that would have been a little bit too harsh, I think. Next up then, Jumbo-Visma, home to defending champion Jonas Vingegaard. This is the kit that their men's and women's teams will be using this July, still with the trademark yellow, but mainly black now, with a map of France on the chest, some stars or constellations dotted around there as well. Now, small details might look good when you're creating the design or up close and personal with the kit, but from a helicopter shot, you're not really going to see them, are you? I'm not a big fan of this kit personally, so 5 out of 10, I think, for me. Team DSM have changed their kit design mainly because of the change of the main sponsor name. DSM will soon become DSM Thermonic, and unfortunately, the new company logo is a lot uglier than the previous one. That name is written across 3 white blotches with the familiar light blue stripe running vertically through the centre. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. I prefer the previous one. So on a par for me with Jumbo-Visma, 5 out of 10 for that. On to Movistar now, whose white and ice blue kit are designed to raise social awareness of the climate emergency and its impact on the oceans. Apparently, at least 60% recycled plastics are used to produce the fabrics used for the jerseys, and they claim to be the most sustainable kits ever worn by any Tour de France team. At the end of the race, the kit will be signed and then auctioned off, with the proceeds going to international funds and programmes taking care of the oceans. Now, the dark blue remains, but only on the collar and cuffs. The rest of the kit is predominantly white, with a light blue Movistar logo on the chest. I like it. I haven't seen any on-the-bike shots just yet, but I'm going to give that one an 8 out of 10. Next up then, Uno X making their debut at the race on the men's side this year, but I believe this kit change is for the rest of the season, not just for July. This new design is due to a new sponsor, Rema 1000, a supermarket in Norway, and is now mainly red instead of the orange or dark yellow that we're used to. But that colour still remains across the chest, housing the Uno X logo. Now, I wasn't a massive fan of the Uno X kit before, and I'm still not. I'm afraid. I am a massive fan of the team and I will be over the moon if they take a stage win or more at the race, but the kit just isn't doing it for me. 3 out of 10. Or, is that too harsh? I mean, it is going to stand out, which is always good for commentary. Okay, I'll give Uno X a 4. Sorry, Uno X either way. And finally, Astana, Kazakhstan. Jazzy, very jazzy indeed. This is the kit that Mark Cavendish will be wearing as he attempts to take stage win number 35 this year. And it's going to be hard to miss him, isn't it? Various shades of blue are infiltrated by flashes of Tour de France yellow in a sort of tie-dye style, isn't it? It's a bold design, I'll give it that. And I actually really quite like that. I am going to give it 8 out of 10. So my order from best to worst of the new kits for the Tour de France is first up, Bora Hansgrohe, Astana second, joint with Movistar, then Bahrain Victorious and Jumbo-Visma, then Team DSM, and then finally at the bottom, Uno X. But you might, in fact you probably will, completely disagree with me. One that I'm keenly waiting to see is Little Trek, which will be their new name for the Tour de France. We'll find out what that looks like at some point this week. But anyway, let me know what you think of the ones that you've seen, the best and worst Tour de France special kits. Do that in the comment section just down below. Now, there will be a number of riders at the Tour de France who won't be in their normal team kits because they've just become a national champion. As ever, it's almost impossible to go through every single one because there are just so many championships over the course of last week, but I'll go through the bigger ones. And I'll start by letting you know who's going to be wearing the stars and stripes on the roads of France this summer. Chloe Dygert and Quinn Simmons. Dygert is well and truly back, isn't she? She won both the time trial and the road race over in the USA. Now, there's no official confirmation that she will be racing the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, but you would imagine she will be a part of Canyon's team for that race. Simmons took a solo victory in the men's race. Hard to believe, in fact, that he's only 22 still, isn't it? And it'll be very interesting to see what their kits look like. He's hoping for some good designs. Jonathan Vaughters has already promised a very good design for the newly crowned Irish national champion Ben Healy. Runner-up to Ryan Mullen in the time trial, another rider who's been snubbed by Bora for the Tour, incidentally. Healy went on a 100-kilometre solo mission in the road race, winning in the end by over 4 minutes from defending champion Rory Townsend. 22-year-old Lara Gillespie won the women's in a small sprint. Back here in Great Britain, Pfeiffer Georgie regained the title that she last took in 2021, coming to the line 5 seconds clear of Claire Steels, who's been having a great year, I've got to say. Anna Henderson rounded out the podium in third. In the men's, Fred Wright got the better of James Knox and Stevie Williams to claim his first pro win, and one which he dedicated to his late teammate Gino Mader. I'm so pleased for Fred. It feels like that win has been a long time coming, and I'm sure he'll do the national stripes proud in the upcoming races. In the time trials, a 19-year-old Josh Tarling won in the men's in dominant fashion. He put over a minute into Fred Wright, whilst Lizzie Holden won the women's. Christine Mahrez won again in Luxembourg. The win was pretty much in the bag, though, in the time trial because she was the only elite participant. But interestingly, the winner of the under-23 time trial, Nina Burton, was 6 seconds quicker than Mahrez. Either way, that's the 16th consecutive win in the time trial for her, and she went on to take her 13th consecutive win in the road race, a record that won't be broken for at least 16 years. In the men's, Alex Kirsch of Little Trek did the double, winning both the time trial and the road race. The most exciting race that I saw at the weekend, though, was the men's road race in France. Worth going back to watch that if you didn't see it at the time. At one point, Groupama FDJ had 3 riders in a leading group of 3. But then David Gaudu, who had looked the strongest in the race just minutes before and who instigated the winning move, completely hit the wall. He sailed back through the groups behind him, eventually finishing over 12 minutes down in 15th position. Up front, Valentin Madouas was sailing to his first ever national elite title, arriving at the finish almost 2 minutes clear of teammate Rudy Mollard, with Julien Bernard third. The women's was won by Team Cofidis' aptly named Victoire Berthaud, and apparently that's the first ever elite French road title in all their years sponsoring a team. The TTs were won by Remy Cavagna and Cédrine Cabal, who is having a brilliant year looking back through her results. In Belgium, Lotte Kopecky sprinted to her third national road title, having already won the time trial a few days previous, whilst Remco Evenepoel nabbed his first Belgian national elite road title. He outsprinted Alex Sajar, who was the only rider able to go with Evenepoel's attack. Evenepoel is the first reigning world champion to win the Belgian title since Marcel Kint in 1939, while Sajar is the youngest rider to finish on the podium since Eddy Merckx in 1965. Evenepoel could only manage fourth in the time trial earlier on in the week, although not bad considering he had quite a bad crash that day. Wout van Aert took the win on that occasion. In winning the national championships in the Netherlands for the first time, Demi Vollering has now amassed more wins in the last 4 months than the first 5 years of her career. She went clear solo, beating teammate Lorena Wiebes with Van Vleuten in third. Teammates Dylan van Baarle and Olaf Koy also went 1-2 in the men's race, with Van der Poel having to settle for third. In Italy, it was a 7th national time trial victory for Elisa Longo Borghini and her 4th in the road race. There, she had Gaia Riolini for company in a decisive group of 4. She was on the attack herself, Riolini, before later helping Longo Borghini towards the finish. It was close, though. Silvia Persico took silver and probably would have won had she not had to brake as Longo Borghini took the racing line around the left-hand bend, closing Persico into the barriers. In the men's, Simone Velasco of Astana outsprinted a small group to the line. Matteo Trentin was not happy there, probably because UAE Team Emirates had managed to finish 5th and 6th from a group of 6. The time trial there was won by Filippo Ganna. Matthias Skjelmoser continued his run of good form in Denmark. He'll wear the famous red and white Danish national champions jersey for the Little Trek at the Tour de France coming up. Earlier in the week, he'd finished second to Kasper Asgreen in the time trial. Rebecca Kerner and Emma Norsgaard won the road race and time trials respectively on the women's side up in Denmark. There were a couple of podium clean sweeps in yesterday's races. Uno X in the men's Norwegian road race. Frederik Dversnes, apologies for the mispronunciation, taking his first title ahead of Christoph and Abla Hampson, whilst in Germany, Emanuel Buchmann won by over a minute from Nico Dent and Max Schachmann to regain the title he last took 8 years ago. Mika Kroger and Niels Pollitt won the time trials and Liana Lippert the women's road race in Germany. Peter Sagan took silver at the Slovakian Championships, which is run in conjunction with the Czech Republic nationals, despite crashing just before the line. Mateusz Stoček became the first non-Sagan to win the title since 2010, whilst Matthias Vacek won the Czech title. In Switzerland, Mark Hirschi took his first elite road title, Caroline Bauer in the women's, and finally, down in Spain, there was a brilliant win for Oya Lascano of Movistar. Now, you may well remember him from Dwars door Vlaanderen earlier on this year, in which he was up the road in the breakaway all day, and yet still found the energy to mix it up with the big boys and take second. He was climbing very well at the Tour de Suisse too, so a man with a very bright future indeed, beating Juan Ayuso on the day. Mavi Garcia took the title in the women's race at the age of 39. Lascano, incidentally, had finished runner-up to Castroviejo, who took his 6th national time trial title earlier in the week. Right then, would you like to guess what we've got coming up for you on GCN Plus this week? That's right, it's the Tour de France. The team's presentation in Bilbao on Thursday evening will be covered live, and then the race proper kicks off with a really tough stage this coming Saturday. I honestly cannot wait. Our big preview is going to be out on the channel this week, in which we'll go through all of the stages and most of the big names taking part in the race. Live and on-demand coverage of the race is available if you're in Europe or the Asia Pacific, excluding China, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, whilst we'll have short highlights available worldwide. There will also be a whole host of other Tour de France related content on the app, much of it free to read, as well as the main GCN YouTube channel, so keep your eyes peeled for all of that as well. We've also got a limited edition run of clothing and accessories now available over at shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com to celebrate the biggest month in cycling. So head over there if you'd like to get your hands on some of that. We're also hoping to have live coverage of the second Women's Grand Tour of the year from Friday, the Giro Donne. And I say hoping because as we record this, it still hangs in the balance. There have been some financial problems faced by the current organisers, who went to the Italian Federation to see if they could bail them out. Not a good look for what is supposed to be one of the biggest races on the women's calendar. Anyway, all being well, you'll be able to watch all of the 10 stages in all GCN Plus territories live and on demand. Beyond the live racing, we will also have our World of Cycling Tour de France preview show out on Wednesday. I'm going to be joined by EF Education Easy Post DS Tom Southam and for the first time ever, Charlie Quarterman. recent finisher of the Giro d'Italia. So it's going to be great to get their insights. Meanwhile, our documentary this week is entitled Heartbreak. We followed Sonny Colbrelli at the start of this year as he made his transition from professional cyclist to staff member at Bahrain Victorious. Quite a heartbreaking story after he had to give up due to heart problems. Here's a quick trailer for you so you know what to expect.
Sonny Colbrelli è stato uno dei migliori corridori italiani degli ultimi 20 anni. La sua carriera è stata ottima, ma nel 2021 è diventata straordinaria.
Sonny Colbrelli, in the form of his life, might be about to secure the surprise of the century. Here comes Colbrelli, Colbrelli through the centre, Viva Italia! Sonny Colbrelli is the winner of Paris-Roubaix.
E sono davvero contento e potrò dire che la mia ultima vittoria è stata la Parigi-Roubaix. Vero. Io mi sentivo bene, mi sentivo voglia di strafare, parto lungo come ho sempre fatto, poi il problema a ruota mia avevo meteo.
Nel senso, io ero a casa tranquilla e stavo lavoricchiando al computer. Poi mi scappa l'occhio su un messaggio dove dice: mi dispiace per tuo marito, spero vada tutto bene.
Il nero davanti a me, il nero.
That documentary will be available for all GCN Plus subscribers to watch from tomorrow, Tuesday. In other races, Puk Pieterse continued her amazing season by taking the European XCO Mountain Bike Championships, whilst Vlad Dascula took the win for Romania in the men's. Miguel Angel Lopez won 8 out of the 9 stages at the Vuelta a Colombia, a UCI 2.2 ranked stage race, whilst at the first ever eSports Olympic cycling event, Team Fuego took the win. And finally, it feels like a long time ago, but the Women's Tour de Suisse concluded last Tuesday with Marlon Russa taking overall honours. The final stage was won by Niamh Fisher-Black, which was her first at World Tour level. In other news, the Tour de France femme avec Zwift is going to start in the Netherlands in 2024. That is going to be huge, given how many of the best female pros in the world are Dutch, isn't it? Primoz Roglic has revealed his race schedule for the rest of the season. No Tour de France, no World Championships. His sole focus for the rest of the year is a 4th win at the Vuelta a España, which could pit him up against Remco Evenepoel again. Olaf Koy, contrary to speculation, has decided not to leave Jumbo-Visma at the end of this year, but instead signed a new contract through to the end of 2025. An interesting decision, that, given how GC-focused that team is. He's hoping he gets to ride his first Grand Tour at some point, with at least some kind of lead-out support. There are also reports that Ben Toulet is on the move to Jumbo-Visma. The 21-year-old is coming to the end of his 2-year contract with Ineos Grenadiers, and given his results, I personally thought they'd want to retain his services. Ben Healy, arguably the most improved rider of this year, has renewed his contract with EF Education EasyPost, presumably at least 10 times the salary that he's been on. That new deal will see him remain at the team until at least the end of 2026. That is all for now. This time next week, the first 2 stages of the Tour de France will have been completed. Can you believe it? Ahead of that, I will see you for the preview show and for the world of cycling. But goodbye for now.